And on day 36 of his term, US President Joe Biden dropped his first ever bomb on Syria. It must have been such a proud moment for his so very diverse cabinet, especially for Kamala Harris, the first woman vice president of color to drop a bomb on a sovereign nation. Because why on earth not? Diplomacy is back, President Joe Biden declared at the Munich Security Conference last week, but so is bombing Syria apparently. Biden has only been president a bit more than a month, but he has already ordered his first bombing campaign. Mind you, it took Trump 4 months to do the same. The target was a military checkpoint in eastern Syria used by the Syrian Arab Army and their allies, the Iraqi PMU, to secure the borders from Daesh attacks. But why use US warjets and US-made bombs to obliterate the actual Daesh terrorists when you can eliminate the only force capable of defeating Daesh? Presumably, Biden wanted to signal to Iran as the JCPOA diplomacy window was about to be opened that it would pay a heavy price if it keeps up its support for the regional resistance. But by bombing Syria for this reason, Biden proved how failing to rejoin the nuclear agreement endangers US interests in the region while Iran's nuclear program continues to advance. What Biden did was not shifting to diplomacy in any way. Rather, he kept up the empire's risky warmongering rhetoric, making the US and Iran glide closer to a military confrontation. While Biden campaigned on a commitment to return to his JCPOA, his attempt to play hardball with Iran and his airstrikes against Syria and his refusal to remove suffocating sanctions on Iran signal a foreign policy intent on continuing US imperialism in West Asia. The US airstrikes also signal the Biden administration's support for the Israeli regime, which had its own array of airstrikes along the Syria-Iraq border over the years. Biden, of course, is no stranger to the use of airstrikes. As vice president, he was complicit in the Obama administration's attempts to institute regime change all across the region, infamously bombing 7 different countries at one time. Welcome to the Mideastream. I'm Marwa Osman. In his first military action since inauguration, Joe Biden launched a series of airstrikes against Syria, signaling a renewed imperialist offensive in the region. This serves as a reminder for the victims of U.S. imperialism abroad that there is no lesser evil when it comes to the U.S. It is simply back to normal for the U.S. as Biden and his Vice President Kamala Harris are only escalating the wars started by former President Barack Obama. Now, to discuss this issue with us from Beirut is Sharmeen Narwani, political commentator and journalist. Thank you for being with us, Sharmeen. Now, Biden thought that he was giving the world some sort of a glimpse of how is he likely going to approach one of the greatest security concerns for the United States of America and the American puppet regimes, if I may, in the region, which is the network of resistance factions by targeting Kataib Hezbollah, which are part of the Popular Mobilization Forces on the Syrian-Iraqi border, which they are there to begin with to prevent Daesh from roaming in these areas. How do you think this stunt will play out on both sides, both in Syria and in Iraq, where the U.S. occupation troops are still residing?
Well, not very well at all. In fact, very badly. I mean, let's not forget these countries are divided in terms of those who support Iran or who support Iraqi sovereignty, nationalists, etc., and then those who are pro-America, which I believe are a minority in both countries. And so, we have to realize that when the Americans launch airstrikes like this, they're doing so for specific reasons. One is to play to their domestic constituents, the media, the pundit class, but their constituents also go outside that. They're playing to their NATO partners. Biden's showing the world, he's showing his NATO partners that the U.S. is back and in play under a Biden administration, and also the Saudis and Israelis and Emiratis who have invested a lot in the U.S. military-industrial complex. So, number one, the U.S. plays to its constituencies. Number two, the U.S. is marking its territory like a dog would. That Iraq is still very much in play, okay, and we're the boss man here. And I think the third thing is to maybe deter foes. And this is where they always fail, because both in Iraq and Syria, we have seen a great deal of efficiency on the armed forces and militias that are fighting ISIS and who are opposed to U.S. forces remaining in those countries. So I think, the foes actually, in this case, they gain more resolve. But I want to point out something that, here's Biden doing a strike that really, it killed one person, sadly, a Hashishabi fighter who was fighting ISIS, obviously, and patrolling on the border. But as much as the Americans try to impose their narratives on the world, we're still boss, we still can play in your territorial, ground. The Americans may dominate narratives, but as I say time and time again, is we now control the outcomes in the region. So, in fact, Biden is giving his foes more resolve, and I believe we will see more action, more coordination to expel U.S. troops, which was, in fact, what the Iraqi parliament voted for a year ago.
Well, Sharmeen, we had Kataib Hezbollah officially describing the martyr fighter as a member of Iraq's Popular Mobilization Forces, which is a collection of resistance groups, if people still don't know, that includes Kataib Hezbollah and are officially part of the Iraqi armed forces as per a bill passed by the parliament back in 2017. Yet 4 days prior to the attack of the US on these fighters, Prime Minister Qademi tweeted about reaffirming his commitment with the US in what is now being seen as a green light to target those fighters. How will that be translated inside of Iraq's internal political arena?
Well, terrible, because, the Iraqi population is already pretty polarized on many, many issues. And, none of them want the U.S. to use Iraqi territory as a battleground to fight its little internal battle with Iran. So I think you are going to have more polarization. I think Prime Minister Kadhimi was very, very foolish to openly, by the way, he tweeted right after he'd had a call with U.S. President Joe Biden. So, to say that you were committed to improving on and bolstering the U.S.-Iraqi relationship in the fight against ISIS and for the benefit of the Iraqi people, a year after the U.S. Violated international law and launched an attack against an Iranian general and a senior member of the Iraqi army and the deputy commander Hashishabi, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. And then to completely ignore that the Iraqi parliament voted to expel foreign forces is a very foolish move by Kadhimi, because he has put himself very squarely in the sort of pro-U.S. camp right now. I think, it's important for Kadhimi and others to understand something. The ones who are not so opposed to the U.S. Are, they talk often about they need to strike a balance between their U.S. and their Iran policy, which is fair enough. Iraq is a sovereign country. It has the right to act in its own self-interest. And it doesn't want to be dominated by a neighbor next door. It doesn't want to be dominated by the world's military power, right? So, but in order to have a balance and to have a fair playing field, so neither Iran or the U.S. has an advantage, U.S. forces have to leave Iraqi territory. There are no Iranian forces on Iraqi territory. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? If U.S. policy has been conducted out of Washington, Iran policy has been conducted out of Tehran, and they both have their proponents in Iraq, that's a fair playing field, and that gives Iraq the breathing space to act as a sovereign nation.
Well, Sharmeen, we heard Syria's foreign ministry saying that the Arab country strongly condemns the American act of aggression on its soil, claiming that it will not undermine the Syrian commitment along with its allies to drive the American occupation out of the Syrian soil. Does this signal some sort of a possible targeting of U.S. occupation facilities inside Syria, similar to what is now happening in Iraq as well?
Sadly, I don't think so. I think that we know well that the Syrians have been using this language in opposition to the continual occupation of their territory by both U.S. forces and Turkish forces. So I do not believe the Syrian government can act against U.S. forces, because then, the U.S. establishment and the pundit class will use that as an opportunity to launch attacks against the Syrian state and the Syrian government, maybe the Syrian army. So I don't think the Syrians will launch direct attacks against U.S. interests inside Syria. I think the way to do this, to get U.S. forces out of Syria, frankly, is to expel them from Iraq. Because U.S. forces in the northeast of Syria and the southeast of Syria will no longer have, nobody will have their backs any longer. They will essentially be territorially isolated, okay, and landlocked. So there are few Syrian forces in Iraq, much, less than in Syria, and there are few U.S. forces in Syria, much less than in Iraq. And in Iraq, the U.S. has a lot of ability to move around, flexibility to move around. If those forces are expelled, not just from Iraq, but particularly around the border areas, from north to south of the Syrian border, the U.S. forces in Syria will no longer have the cover, and they will leave that way. And so I think really now you have to have a prime minister in Iraq who has the guts to align with the leadership in Syria, to have a joint commitment to the removal of foreign forces from their territories.
Well, I really wanted to talk more about how the U.S. media is calling this asserting U.S. leadership, but unfortunately we're out of time. I want to thank you very much, Sharmeen Irwani, political commentator and journalist, for joining us from Beirut to talk about, after 37 days, how Biden decided to bomb Syria. That's not a surprise, but it happened. Thank you very much. Now, please stay tuned. Next, we will be talking about how Yemen is fighting for its life as the U.S. plays a charade for all the world to watch. Now, in the dying days of Donald Trump's presidency, former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced his imprudent decision to designate the Yemeni Ansarullah resistance movement as a terrorist organization. Shortly after, Biden's Secretary of State Antony Blinken reversed Pompeo's decisions vis-a-vis Ansarullah, allegedly to avoid obstructing the delivery of food and medicine to the Yemeni civilians who are being starved to death in the Saudi-orchestrated genocide. The U.S.'s humanitarian charade in Yemen in this following report. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken revoked on February 16 designations of Yemen's Ansarullah movement as a foreign terrorist organization and a specially designated global terrorist group. The decision reversing the former Trump administration's blacklisting of the Yemeni resistance is part of a policy shift by U.S. President Joe Biden, allegedly aimed at easing the world's worst humanitarian crisis and intensifying diplomacy to end the Saudi aggression on Yemen. The United Nations and aid organizations had shared fears that the sanctions imposed on Ansarullah under the designations could strangle food deliveries just as the threat of major famine is rising. Blinken, however, did not take too long to signal limits to U.S. tolerance of the Ansarullah movement, reiterating that three of its leaders, Sayyid Abdul Malik al-Houthi, Abdul Khaliq Badr al-Houthi, and Abdullah Yahya al-Hakim, will remain subject to U.S. sanctions. Meanwhile, as the U.S. continued with its humanitarian charade, heavy airstrikes by the Saudi-led coalition ripped through the Yemeni city of Hodeidah, obliterating an entire family of 5, including children, on Saturday, in what is now the daily lives of Yemenis for the past 6 years, which would have never happened without an American green light. It is because of this American-Saudi genocide, the Yemenis firmly believe that the reasons behind Biden's decision to revoke Ansarullah terrorist designation is not the moral guilt and sense of complicity of American leaders in Washington or American apathetic public opinion. Rather, it is an assiduous effort to extricate the United States' closest ally in West Asia, Saudi Arabia, from the Yemeni quagmire. This is also evident in the current Battle of Ma'rib that Ansarullah are winning on a fast pace, in which the US installed military experts to lead the Saudi battle in Ma'rib. Ansarullah sent out a clear message by their spokesperson Muhammad Ali al-Houthi for that specific matter, telling Biden that if he really wants peace, he must withdraw his experts and push the British to stop arming the planes targeting the resistance all across Yemen. Ma'rib was never a quiet front, yet the Security Council felt silent all these years and then woke up just now to call for an end of fighting when Ansarullah are only a few kilometers away from liberating the entire governorate from the US-enabled Saudi occupation. Now, to discuss this issue with us from Beirut is Laith Marouf, political commentator. Thank you for being with us, Laith. Now, heavy airstrikes by Saudi-led coalition have been ripping through the Yemeni cities, especially the major ones, all throughout the past 6 years. While the American officials, doesn't matter whether they were Democrats or Republicans, they never raised a red flag to stop it. But now, Ansarullah is being delisted from the foreign terrorist organizations by the new Biden administration. Do you think that this act will ensue a change to the American pro-Saudi approach against Yemen?
Well, remember, the designation of terrorist organization for Ansarullah happened just at the end of the Trump regime era. And so it was kind of a parting gift between Trump and MBS. And right now, Biden is returning to the usual. For 5 years, the United States, prior to designating the Houthis, Ansarullah, as a terrorist organization, they were helping the Saudi Arabia bomb the hell out of Yemen. It didn't matter that they were not listed as such. So really, it's just taking off this basic designation and returning to the usual genocidal colonialism of the United States and Saudi Arabia and Yemen.
Well, Laith, they were embroiled, the Yemenis were embroiled by years long of genocide inflicted by the American-Saudi-Israeli coalition. I think that's why they believe that the Biden delisting and revoking Ansarullah's terrorist designation is not out of moral guilt from Biden or the sense of maybe a complicity by the American leaders in Washington. Rather, it's some sort of a tireless effort to extricate the United States' biggest ally in the region, and that's Saudi Arabia, from the Yemeni quagmire. Is that why Biden is at odds with Mohammed bin Salman? He wants to stop the war. Mohammed bin Salman doesn't?
Well, it's more like Biden wants to shake down Saudi Arabia, just like Trump did, but in a different way. So we have to think about the same announcement about the assassination of Khashoggi at the Saudi embassy in Turkey that just happened by the United States. It's not really to condemn or Saudi Arabia or isolate MBS. It's to shake him down for more money. And in this situation for Yemen, what is clear is that the United States image is getting tarnished by association. Everybody is watching what's happening in Yemen. Everybody in the world knows it's the worst humanitarian starvation situation on the whole planet, and thanks to Saudi Arabia and its masters in the UK, Israel, and the United States. So that's really only a cosmetic change. What will make a difference, and what is making a difference on the ground, is the resistance of the Yemeni people who are defeating all the tools of the empire.
Well, the flood of U.S. weaponry and arms to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has definitely helped the Saudi despotic regime to kill thousands of Yemenis, including children of Yemen, on school buses and families trying to flee the violence by Saudi Arabia. Biden says that he stopped the arms sales to Saudi Arabia, and yet just a week after he said that, we saw SAM, the Saudi Defense Ministry, signing new contracts with Lockheed Martin to transfer technology, knowledge, and training to Saudi nationals to manufacture products and produce services to the kingdom's armed forces. What now? Is it like, we're not going to sell you the guns, but we're going to teach you how to make them yourselves?
Part of it is that, and the other part is all the other provinces and protectorates of the United States, meaning Canada, for instance, are going to ratchet up the sale of their weapons while the United States pretends that it's cutting down on sales to weapons. And in the case of this situation of transfer of knowledge and technologies, do you really think that there will be Saudi scientists and workers that are building these weapons? They're going to basically purchase a whole factories, transfer them into Saudi Arabia, and bring with them the workers on to do the work in Saudi Arabia. So really, this is, again, just trying to camouflage the continued support for the genocide in Yemen.
Well, that definitely is it's some sort of an ironic issue, but at the same time, it would be very sad if that happens and the war is still going on. But Saudi Arabia claimed on Saturday that it had intercepted a missile attack coming from the Yemeni side over the capital, Riyadh, and that's not the first time. The latest in a series of airborne attacks claimed by the Ansarullah resistance movement in Yemen. All the while, we are watching Yemen, the battlefield in Yemen, the front lines are falling apart. The Saudi front lines and Ansarullah are advancing really fast there. But at the same time, Mohammed bin Salman continues to bomb civilian areas. He killed on Sunday, very early morning on Sunday, he killed a family of 5 members, including children. I saw the photos and my heart just stopped right there. I mean, what will it take to rid Mohammed bin Salman's hands once and for all off of the civilians in Yemen?
Their defeat. That's what's going to happen. These are tools of the empire. Mohammed bin Salman is not making decisions on his own. Israel is telling him what to do. The United States is telling him what to do. And the West cannot fathom that the Yemeni people are so proud and willing to sacrifice everything for their freedom and for their dignity. And that's what's going to change the reality on the ground. We can see clearly right now that the United States knows that its tools like Saudi Arabia and the Emirates cannot defeat Yemen and its will. It's trying to withdraw, but it doesn't want to withdraw in a way that makes it also weak. And this is the quagmire that the imperial power is in, and it's all thanks to the resistance of the Yemeni people.
Do you think that the front line in Ma'rib will change a lot of issues concerning a possible dialogue between Ansarullah and the Saudi aggression coalition?
Hopefully very soon, because now the resistance is on the outskirts of the city of Ma'rib. If they do take the city of Ma'rib, it means the whole of the northeast of Yemen will fall back to its national sovereignty, which means all the oil and gas that Saudi Arabia has been smuggling out, most probably selling to Israel, will be returned to the Yemeni sovereignty. The defeat of the Saudi Arabia is coming, and that's what's going to stop the war. Before that, the delusions that are in the heads of people like MBS and those who handle him will have to be crushed.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Laith Marouf from Beirut, talking to us about what the possible Yemen scene would look like in the event that Ma'rib is liberated, and how this U.S. charade is falsifyingly playing that they are actually trying to help Yemenis when on the ground they are not. They are helping Mohammed bin Salman and enabling him to create even more massacres in Yemen. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for watching. Please stay tuned next week for more from the Mideastream.